Well, welcome back, everybody. We are starting a new unit where we are looking at the cell and all of its structures. And this is very exciting because we've gone from the big picture of evolution and ecology, and now we're heading to the microscopic world of the cell and its structures. Let's start by just asking ourselves, what do we know about cells? Here's the first thing. We haven't found anything living that isn't composed of cells. All life is composed of cells. The smallest living species are unicellular, so the cell is the simplest collection of matter that is alive. Cells are only made from existing cells, so that means that all cells are related by their descent from earlier cells. And that relates to what we learned in evolution, that all life has a single common ancestor. Cellular organization spontaneously decays and breaks down without a constant flow of energy through the cell. In other words, cells cannot stay alive without constant energy input. And so cells need to procure that energy from the environment. And you know that autotrophs are able to do that from inanimate sources of energy, whereas heterotrophs have to get that energy by consuming a biological form of energy. New cells get information from their parent cells. In other words, hereditary information is passed from one generation to the next. And that turns out to be very important, as you saw in the evolution unit. And all cells have a common set of structures. And some of these that you will get to know in this unit are the cellular membrane, also known as the plasma membrane, the ribosome, and the genetic material, which is composed of DNA. All these statements that are highlighted in blue are known as cell theory. They are fundamental in the sense that we know no exceptions to these rules. Before we get into our investigation of cells, here are some of the things we want to know about cells. One, what are the structures found inside cells? How are they organized internally? What processes go on inside those cells? How do cells make new cells? How is the genetic information stored in cells? How is the genetic information expressed in cells? So we're going to use that word, expression of genetic information. How is the genetic information passed from one cell to its descendants? So these are questions that we will be spending quite a bit of time on. In this unit, we're going to look at the structures found in cells, but we won't look at how cells reproduce until maybe January. And we won't look at how genetic information is stored in the next unit in December on DNA. And we'll also look at how it's expressed in that unit. And we'll talk about how it's passed on in the cellular reproduction unit, which is in January. So this is going to be several months of study to answer these questions. Now let's first identify the common structures found in all cells. The basic features of all cells, both prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells, about which I'll have much more to say in the next few minutes, are the plasma membrane, which is also known as the cell membrane, and it forms the outside boundary of the cell. A semi-fluid substance inside the cell membrane or the plasma membrane called cytoplasm, or also can be known as cytosol. And cytosol is just a word that is made by shortening cytoplasmic solution. And a solution, don't forget, is any liquid into which other substances are dissolved. Next are chromosomes. All cells have chromosomes. These chromosomes carry genes, and they are composed of DNA. And the next are ribosomes, and ribosomes is the site of protein synthesis, which you're going to find out is key to the expression of genes. And ribosomes are made of RNA and also of proteins. Structure and function are related. Structures have been designed by evolution to carry out a function. What I mean by that, they have evolved to carry out a function. But they're also constrained by the laws of physics and chemistry. Not everything can evolve. even though it sometimes seems that way. And that's going to be something we're going to be seeing throughout the entire year. So let's first look at prokaryotic cells. They're found in two domains, as you already know, the bacteria and the archaea. Prokaryotic cells do not have a nucleus. The DNA is in an unbound region, and we refer to it as the nucleoid, which means it's nucleus-like. Prokaryotic cells lack membrane-bound organelles, in other words, substructures in the cell that are contained within a plasma membrane. They have a single circular chromosome, which is composed of DNA, but does not have a large number of proteins associated with it. And here are two representations of a prokaryotic cell. This is a bacterium called Bacillus coagulans here, and this is a transmission electron micrograph, and this is what you can see when you look at the micrograph. And here is an artist's rendition of this. And as you can see, here's the nucleoid, here are the ribosomes, these little dark dots, the plasma membrane is here. These have a cell wall, an outer coat, which isn't part of the living cell, but which protects it. And they also have a capsule outside that in the case of bacteria. And in this case, this bacteria has flagella, which allow it to move around. Eukaryotic cells, in contrast, have DNA inside a nucleus, and the nucleus is contained inside a membranous nuclear envelope. We call the membrane around the nucleus the nuclear envelope, and we're going to see that it's pretty special. Eukaryotic cells have organelles, little substructures that are membrane bound, meaning they're surrounded by membrane. The chromosomes are linear, not circular, larger and more complex, and have many proteins associated with the DNA. And they're generally much larger than prokaryotic cells. So what do cells do all day? First, they reproduce, and they do that by splitting themselves in half, and where there was one cell, there's now two. So they have to spend time reproducing. They grow after reproduction. They have to grow back to their full size. They live. They have to maintain themselves. And this is known as basic metabolism. Many of them move, so they have to spend energy moving. They have to obtain energy for growth and maintenance and movement. They have to obtain nutrients, and the nutrients contain atoms such as nitrogen and phosphorus. They have to excrete waste products into the environment. They have to sense their environment and communicate with other cells. So they have a large number of things that they have to do. That's if we think about cells as unicellular organisms. But when multicellularity comes along, cells are able to specialize and develop these specialized functions. So, for example, many cells produce a molecule product that is stored in the cell or released to the outside of the cell and transmitted to other parts of the body. Some cells carry out actions, for example, muscle cells. They cause movement in the body. Macrophages are white blood cells that actually attack bacteria and viruses that are behaving hostilely to your body. Finally, erythrocytes carry oxygen from your lungs to the capillary beds, where they release that oxygen to all your cells deep inside your body. Some cells, their job is to detoxify poisons ingested by the organism. Some cells sense the environment and send electrical or chemical messages to other cells. So cells have a lot of things that they have to do. Now, it's a little known fact, but it's very difficult to have a serious conversation with cells. Why? Because they're so celly. Cells' favorite place to be is jail because there are so many cells. They love the telephone, especially the cell phone. And they never have sex because they're celibate. I thought you'd like to know all that information. In eukaryotic cells, there are many structures that we're going to learn. And plant and animal cells have mostly the same structures, the same organelles inside, but each one has unique structures, and we're going to learn about both. So we're going to take a look at a representation of an animal cell and then a plant cell and look at some of these structures. And don't worry about getting them all right now. You will be learning this several times in the next week or two, so you will have a chance to do it. A good idea for you, though, might be to go to the internet and get a blank cell diagram. Just Google blank cell diagram. And you can probably even find the diagram I use in this PowerPoint and label these as you go along. Here is an animal cell, and you can tell it's an animal cell because it lacks a cell wall. It's got a large central nucleus inside of which you have the DNA. That is surrounded by these sac-like layers and these pipe-like layers known as endoplasmic reticulum. The pipe-like ones are called smooth ER. ER stands for endoplasmic reticulum. And the flat ones are called rough ER. We'll talk more about that. Then you have this stack of pita breads here, known as the Golgi apparatus. These dark dots that you see sprinkled throughout that are free in the cytoplasm and attached to the endoplasmic reticulum are called ribosomes. And then there are other organelles, such as this mitochondrion, this spherical organelle, the lysosome, these bodies right here, which are the centrioles inside the centrosome, and there are elements of cytoskeleton. The lysosomes and the centrioles are unique to animal cells and not in plant cells. Let's now take a look at a plant cell. Here's a plant cell. You can tell it pretty quickly by a number of things. It has a cell wall, and it has these chloroplasts. These structures here we'll talk about in a second, and this large central vacuole. But like the animal cell, it has a cell membrane inside the cell wall. It has a large nucleus inside of which the DNA occurs. It is surrounded by endoplasmic reticulum, both the rough endoplasmic reticulum, which has the ribosomes on it, and the smooth pipe-like endoplasmic reticulum. It also has mitochondria, and it has, instead of lysosomes, it has things called peroxisomes, and it has a Golgi apparatus, and it has a centrosome, although it's different. The centrosome doesn't contain the centrioles. And finally, it has these things called chloroplasts, which are the site of photosynthesis, and these are different than animal cells. It has this large central vacuole, and we'll talk about its purpose. It's a large membrane-bound central component. And then it has these holes in the cell wall that are actual links between cells called the plasmodesmata. So that's it for today. In the next class, we're going to take a look at the nucleus and at ribosomes, and perhaps also the endoplasmic reticulum. Until next time, go outside, look at nature, think about the biology of nature, ask biological questions, and I'll see you soon.